Given the unforeseen and unprecedented challenges brought by the pandemic, India is likely to achieve electronics production of $300 billion by 2026, lower than the target of $400 billion by 2025, set as per the National Policy of Electronics 2019, according to a vision document. The document was released by Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, MeitY, in association with the India Cellular and Electronic Association, ICEA. However, the reduced target still aims for a 400% increase from the current level. The document noted that adding the electronics manufacturing had grown from $337.1 billion in 2015-16 to $67.3 billion in 2021. There are various challenges being faced by the industry across qualitative, that is non-tariff infrastructure related, and quantitative, that is tariff-free trade agreement aspects, and need to be addressed in toto to ensure that the manufacturing in India is resilient, globally competitive, and able to undertake operations at a massive scale as per the document. The NATO allies have put forces on standby and sent ships and fighter jets to bolster Europe's eastern defenses as tensions soar over Russia's military buildup around Ukraine, the alliance said on Monday. The tensions have soared over Russia's deployment of some 1 lakh troops and heavy armor at its neighborhood borders. Despite the Kremlin insistence it is not planning a new incursion, the US, Britain and Australia ordered diplomats' families to leave Kyiv, while France told its citizens to avoid non-essential travel to Ukraine. But both Kyiv and European Union foreign policy chief said any withdrawal of diplomatic personnel appeared premature amid doubts over how imminent any attack could be. Top US diplomat Antony Blinken was to dial into meeting of EU counterparts in Brussels to brief them on his meeting Friday with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, where the two sides failed to make a breakthrough but agreed to keep talking. The US is trying to marshal its allies to prepare an unprecedented package of sanctions for Moscow if it sends in more of its forces. The US-led NATO alliance said its members were placing troops on standby and sending ships and jets to bolster Eastern European defenses in response to Russian buildup, pointing to recent decision by Denmark, Spain and Netherlands to mobilize the forces. Well-defined alliance. NATO will continue to take all necessary measures to protect and defend all allies, NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg said. The Kremlin accused the alliance of ramping up tensions through information hysteria and concrete actions, adding that risk of an offensive by Ukrainian troops against pro-Russian separatists are very, very high. Taliban hail Oslo meet as success. On their first visit to Europe since returning to power, the Taliban held landmark talks with Western diplomats in Oslo on Monday over the humanitarian crisis in Afghanistan, a meeting the Islamist regime delegation called an achievement in itself. The international community has, however, insisted the Taliban must respect human rights before aid can be resumed to Afghanistan, where hunger threatens more than half of the population. Having accepted a controversial invitation from Norway, the Taliban were holding talks on Monday with representatives of the US, France, Britain, Germany, Italy and European Union and Norway. The closed-door discussions were taking place at Soria Moria Hotel on a snowy hilltop outside Oslo, with the Taliban delegation led by Foreign Minister Amir Khan Muttaqi, who hailed the fact that meeting took place as a success in its own right. Norway providing us this opportunity is an achievement in itself because we shared the stage with the world, Mr. Muttaqi told reporters on Monday. From these meetings, we are sure of getting support of Afghanistan's humanitarian, health and education sectors, he added. Marital rape. Center seeks time in High Court. The center on Monday told the Delhi High Court that issue of criminalization of marital rape involves family issues and the dignity of women and cannot be looked at from a microscopic angle. Solicitor General Tushar Mehta, appearing for the center, urged the High Court to allow a reasonable time to place the position of government after consultation with the stakeholders. Your lordships are not just deciding the statutory or constitutional validity of a provision. It may not be looked at from that microscopic angle. Here the dignity of women is at stake. There are family issues. There would be several considerations which would weigh with the government to take a position, the Solicitor General said. It would not be possible for the center to respond immediately, particularly when there is no imminent threat that something is going to happen to someone. I would reiterate my request that we would need a reasonable time. A bench of Justice Rajiv Shakdar and Justice C. Harishankar hearing a batch of petitions challenging the provision in law that makes an exception for marital rape said this issue cannot be kept hanging. For some people, here there is a live case of one of the petitioner. Every day matters for a simple reason that someday this abuse is happening, maybe not reported, but this is happening. Now it can't be our answer that listen, it has been there be 100 years now. What is the urgency? The court said. Striking down exception. In India, marital rape is not defined in any statute or law. The NGOs are RIT Foundation and All India Democratic Women's Association, man and woman, are seeking striking down of the exception granted to husbands. The exception says sexual intercourse by a man with his wife aged 15 years or above is not rape, even if it is without her consent. In October 2017, the Supreme Court increased it to 18 years. India-Israel mark a major milestone. India and Israel started a series of events to celebrate 3 decades of diplomatic relation which began in 1992. The Monday event launched the logo for 30th anniversary featuring the Star of David and the Ashok Chakra, the symbols that appear on the flags of 2 countries, Star of David and the Ashok Chakra. The 30th anniversary will be marked with a series of events and high-level visits spread across the year. A visit from the Prime Minister Naftali Bennett was expected in January, but it is likely to take place later this year because of the pandemic situation in India. PM urges children to follow Netaji's example. Prime Minister Narendra Modi interacted with the winners of National Child Award 2022 and extolled the valor and sacrifice of the 4 martyred sons of Guru Gobind Singh. He also urged them to follow Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose's motto of Nation First. 29 children were given the Pradhan Mantri Rashtriya Bal Puraskar for their exceptional achievement in innovation, social science, education, sports, arts and culture, and for demonstrating bravery. They were given digital certificate using blockchain technology and a cash prize of 1 lakh at an event held online. Mr. Modi said, in our country we have the example of Guru Gobind Singh's 4 sons, Sahibzade, who sacrificed their lives at very young age. Their sacrifice for Indian civilization, culture, faith and religion is incomparable. Netaji's contribution. He reminded the children of contribution of Netaji a day after his digital statue was set up at India Gate. You must have seen that we have set up a digital statue of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. Netaji inspires us to believe in duty and principle of nation first, he stated. The Prime Minister told the awardees that they were being honored on a special occasion when the country was celebrating Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav to mark 75 years of independence. This was an occasion to not only be motivated by achievements of the past but to honor the pledges made in the present and to dream and set goals for future, he stressed. He urged the center to take the message of Vocal for Local campaign far and wide. Make a list of all the items you use in a day and identify those that are not made in India. You must insist that your family members buy only those products that are made in India. When you buy such products, their production will increase. This will result in an increase in employment opportunity and help you become self-sufficient, Atmanirbhar. That is why our Atmanirbhar campaigning is linked to the youth of, he added. India needs a national vision. All the world knows, gentlemen, that we are building a new navy. Well, when we get our navy, what are we going to do with it? Asked Alfred T. Mahan, the great naval strategist, in 1892 at the US Naval War College. This is a question we can ask in India, where piecemeal announcements are made in various sectors without a stated national vision. There is no overarching official document to guide policy and decision making. Lessons from China. What do other nations do? In 2015, China released a Made in China 2025 document that envisaged a 10-year plan for development of 10 high-tech industries. The larger aim being to reduce dependence on foreign technology. The target is to be 70% self-sufficient by 2025 and to achieve a dominant position globally by 2049, and the centenary of People's Republic of China. China's 2019 Defense White Paper stated that by 2035 the armed forces would complete the modernization of national defense and military, and by 2049 fully transform the People's Armed Forces into world-class forces. The fifth plenum of Chinese Communist Party re-emphasized China's goal of becoming a modern socialist society by 2049. Western nations too periodically release vision documents, defense overviews, security strategies. Shell-shocked by the advances made by USSR in space exploration in 1950s and early 1960s, US President John F. Kennedy enunciated the May 1961 the American vision to put a man on the moon by the end of decade. Scientists were given a 10-year time frame, were supported financially, and they met the national goal. In August 2018, India announced its aim of sending astronauts into space by 2022. Where are we? India carried out only 2 space launches in 2021, of which one failed, while the China set a world record of 47. India must learn from China while unleashing this path-breaking economic reforms in 1980. Deng Xiaoping asked his countrymen to hide your capability and bide your time. With single-minded conviction and a national vision of regaining China's lost glory, all policies and actions were focused towards first augmenting national power by accretion in economic capability. The central direction in monitoring is visible even now as Beijing goes about its Made in China 2025 plan, a long-term space exploration program, and a military technology enhancement vision. India seems to announce a program first and then go overboard with it. And even as the Atmanirbhar campaign hogs the headline, it would only be nationalistic to ask whether everything needs to be 100% Indian. Is it possible in this era of niche technology being protected by nations which make international cooperation the way out? For sure, a number of projects are indeed being developed indigenously. For instance, advances in UAV and drone industry in the private sector are truly riveting. The radars and missiles are achievements of the DRDO. But while these are success stories, it is dangerous for environment to be pushed into a make-believe world of fox grandeur and equally hazardous that a feeling of being powerful allowed to creep in. Being powerful is having the ability to create and sustain an outcome. This requires depth in a nation's capacity to not only be self-sufficient in focus spheres where necessary for daily subsistence, but to buttress steps undertaken to project national power to safeguard national interests. We announced that India was the world's vaccine capital, but when it came to delivery, New Delhi reneged on its promise to supply COVID-19 vaccine. Our power became suspect in eyes of our friends. Three-step process. If we continue in an unplanned manner, we are doomed to doing jugaad. The very fact that very emergency without exception, Kargil, Mumbai 2611, Doklam, Uri, Pulwama has resulted in dispatch of high-powered teams to make emergency purchases of arms and ammunition, showing that lack of a national vision is costing us dearly. No wonder we get fleeced in such transactions. So the need of the hour is to formulate an all-encompassing document to enable coherence in the process. First, adequate time should be given to experts to draft it. Second, vision should be put through an economic and technological analysis grinder to ensure that it is a realistic national dream. Third, the plan should be implemented by a body of experts that has conference of leadership on both sides of political aisle. A lack of political continuum would be a non-starter for achieving the grand national vision. Dealing with macroeconomic uncertainties. The union budget needs to maintain an accommodative fiscal stance to support the sustainability of economic growth. Macroeconomic uncertainties are mounting against the backdrop of possible interest rate hikes by the US Federal Reserve and the taper tantrum. There is pressure on the Reserve Bank of India to increase its interest rate to prevent capital outflows. The monetary policy corridor is still accommodative to support the growth recovery. Globally, central banks have started increasing the interest rate. However, we need to wait for the Monetary Policy Committee meeting in February 2022 to understand the RBI's decision regarding the policy rates. Inflationary pressures are also high. In India, the wholesale price index WPI inflation rose to a record high of 14.32% in November 2021 as per the data released by Ministry of Commerce and Industry. The WPI wholesale price index decreased slightly to 13.56% in December 2021. The consumer price index CPI inflation now is 5.03%, though that is still within the comfort zone of inflation targeting framework envisaged in India's new monetary framework. The official nominal inflation anchor in India is 4% with a band variation of plus minus 2. It has been argued that inflation we are currently experiencing is transitory in nature due to supply chain disruption and volatile energy and food prices. Absorbing the excess liquidity that was injected to stimulate growth as part of pandemic response is crucial to reversing the trends in non-performing assets (NPAs). The RBI Financial Stability Report published on December 29, 2021 revealed a possible worsening of the gross non-performing asset GNPA ratio of scheduled commercial banks from 6.9% in September 2021 to 9.5% by September 2022 under a severe stress scenario estimates. The RBI has not yet formally announced any normalization procedure, though absorption of excess liquidity was attempted by increasing the cutoff yield rate of variable rate reverse repo to 3.99% for curtailing the government securities acquisition program. Interest rate structure. The structure of interest rate is also a matter of concern. The call money market rates are below the repo rate. The bond yields are increasing ahead of the Union Budget 22-23. The cutoff year yield rate of 10-year benchmark bond is as high as 6.63%. The rise in bond yields will result in higher borrowing costs for the government. Given these macroeconomic uncertainties, maintaining an accommodative fiscal policy stance in the upcoming Union Budget for financial year 23 is crucial for a sustainable recovery. The fiscal deficit as a percentage of GDP rose to 9.5% in 21-22. The RBI estimates suggest that revenue deficit is preempted about 70% of the gross fiscal deficit during the period 1819 to 1920 and increased further to 79% in 2021 and 76% in 21-22. Any attempt at fiscal consolidation at this juncture employing capital expenditure comprehension rather than the tax buoyancy path can adversely affect economic growth. Public investment, infrastructure investment in particular, is a major growth driver, though through crowding in of private corporate investment. Omicron is a reminder that COVID-19 pandemic is still not over. Public spending on health by Union government is still below 1% of GDP, though estimate has increased from 0.2% of GDP in 2021 to 0.4% of GDP in 21-22. Strengthening investment in healthcare sector is crucial at this juncture as a prolonged lockdown can accentuate the current humanitarian crisis and deepen economic disruptions. Bringing down the fiscal deficit now can be detrimental to economic growth recovery. The plausible fiscal risk arising from the mountaining public debt and deficits need to be tackled with a medium-term roadmap of fiscal consolidation, as instantaneous deficit reduction can affect the sustainable growth recovery process. When credit-linked economic stimulus has an uneven impact on growth recovery, the significance of fiscal dominance cannot be undermined. We argue that upcoming Union Budget for 22-23 should maintain an accommodative fiscal stance in order to support the sustainability of the economic growth process and also for financing human development, which is crucial in the time of pandemic. Now, addressing unemployment. Rising unemployment needs to be addressed through an urgent policy response that strengthens job guarantee programs. The welfare models of the government in providing food security to poor households and designing gender budgeting in energy infrastructure are also welcome. However, we need to go further to strengthen the social sector policies in the time of pandemic. To deal with these issues and more, maintaining an accommodative fiscal policy stance in the upcoming Union Budget is crucial. The advanced GDP estimate released by National Statistical Office on January 7, 2022 revealed that India's GDP growth rate will be 9.2% in financial year 22-22 and in financial 21 it was 7.3%. However, this growth estimate is lower than that published by RBI in December 21. which was 9.5%. The growth in nominal GDP is estimated to be 17.6%. These GDP estimates, published ahead of the announcement of Union Budget, are significant as they will be used for projections including those for the fiscal deficit in the upcoming budget. How India emerges from the pandemic to meet these estimates will depend largely on an accommodative fiscal policy stance when monetary policy has limitation in triggering the growth recovery. The evolution of a democratic society is centered around the expansion of rights, civil, political, economic, and culture, leading to a empowerment of people. Democratic nations respect individual and group rights for moral and instrumental reason. Duties, both legal and moral, are cherished in order to reinforce those rights. The obligations of individuals to collective must be understood in that context. Rights and duties complement each other, just as responsibility comes with freedom. Prime Minister Narendra Modi sought to suggest a dichotomy between the rights and duties of citizens when he said last week that the country had wasted a lot of time fighting for rights and neglecting one's duties. His speech was not the first time that he or other Hindutva protagonists have called for a foregrounding of duties over rights. Service and sacrifices of nameless and faceless nation builders have formed the bedrock of modern Indian Republic, but their sacrifices were indeed for rights, dignity and autonomy. Any notion of rights and duties being adversarial or hierarchical is sophistic. The Indian Constitution ensures equality and freedom as fundamental right, along with right against exploitation, freedom of religion, cultural and educational rights, and right to constitutional remedies. The deepening of Indian democracy has led to an expansion of rights. Education, information, privacy are now legally guaranteed rights. The state's fidelity to these rights is tenuous at best. Citizens are generally duty bound to protect the integrity and sovereignty of the country, and this is true for India, though there is no conscription. Other constitutional duties expected include duty to promote harmony and brotherhood, to develop scientific temper, humanism, and a spirit of inquiry. Any shift in state policy emphasis from rights to duties will be absurd and a disservice to many for whom the realization of even fundamental rights is still a work in progress. An enlightened citizenry is critical to progress and good governance, but duty is not something that citizens owe to the state. The obligation of individual citizen to collective pursuit of a nation can be meaningful when their rights are guaranteed by the state. The citizen has a right to use a public road and a duty to obey traffic rules. The right and duty are meaningful only in conjunction. The Prime Minister's comments come against the backdrop. Formal and informal restriction on rights of citizens are on the rise along with coercive powers of state. The emphasis on duty along with the de-emphasis of rights also raises the spectre of a descent into pre-republican norms in social relation. The celebration of India as a traditionally duty-driven society carries with it the inescapable connotation of an exploitative division of labor and norms that are antithetical to the constitutionalism.